thank you so much, Ginat and Sheldon, for hosting us, and more importantly for hosting this fantastic forum. It's the first time for us being in Israel to have the opportunity to attend an event like this, sadly not in real life, but via Zoom. But the advantage is that we are so looking forward to looking at lots of the videos that we actually couldn't be there for in real time. So thank you for having us, and we're going to tell you a little bit about Imago.
Thanks, Ruthie. So I'm just going to begin by explaining a little bit about Imago dialogue, although we want to somehow make this presentation more impactful by sharing the experience of Imago dialogue with you rather than just telling you about it. But just by way of introduction, most couples have an exchange of views in the wrong way at the wrong time, in a way that is somehow rather inflammatory and doesn't necessarily show an understanding, or that they get, to use Imago terminology, the world of the other. So dialogue is a form of communication that can be used A, to express things that we appreciate and admire about each other, and B, and perhaps it's more well known for this, a way of dealing with an issue between two partners in an atmosphere of love, safety, and connection. Those are the three prerequisites to Imago dialogue. Quite often we'll start up a conversation which becomes an argument with each other in the context of a marriage or other partnership, and it becomes an argument because we've not sought out the availability of the person that we want to listen. We haven't assessed that they're currently now able to listen in an atmosphere of love, safety, and connection. Also, when we dialogue with each other, a husband and wife or two partners should do so looking at each other, this connection which we talk about, through what our mentor, Sophie Slade, used to call grandparents' eyes. In other words, rose-coloured spectacles, soft eyes, seeing all the good in each other as we discuss something that is from a slightly different perspective. And each partner has an opportunity to send, to express what the world looks like in their world, and to receive, to listen. Which brings me on to the art of listening. One of the beauties of dialogue is that we listen carefully to the world of the other, and we mirror accurately what we're hearing. What I'm hearing you say is such and such. And yet, two halves of a soul, as facilitators in such a dialogue, we try and insist that the mirroring is pretty accurate. Otherwise you get what I would call Chinese whisper syndrome, whereby we hear what we want to hear, we superimpose on it our own particular views or our own particular perspective. What we need to do here is to cross the bridge into the world of the other. Not meet them halfway, not compromise by meeting them halfway along the bridge, but actually go to the other side, into their world for the time that we're listening, and hear what the world looks like for them. The facilitator, and we don't have one of those today, Ruthie and I are going to take turns to sort of jump in and be facilitators for ourselves, make sure that the couple are on track and that there's nothing accusatory going on, and it's all about what it's like for them when something is happening. And that's the role of the facilitator, and we'll see that a little bit in our demonstration too. Which I believe we're going to start with an appreciation, and then we'll use an Imago dialogue presentation for an issue. Ruthie, have you got anything to add?
No, I think that's great. I think it's important, as Joel mentioned, there's no there's no criticism, shame, blame in this way of working. It's a very safe way. We keep the people that we're working with very safe. I think that's how it perhaps differs in other sorts of relationship therapy. But I think the best thing to do is for you to share the experience with us rather than just hear about it. So,
hold tight and join us on an Imago journey.
okay, so phase 1 is the appreciation. I'm going to give an appreciation to Joel now. In a typical session, both couples would be doing that, but we are very short on time. So the first thing I'll do is check if Joel actually even wants to hear from me. So are you available?
I am available, but just to explain that every Imago interaction begins with an appointment. Because one of the problems in the big wide world is we ask each other about something and the person's involved with something else. It could be the phone, it could be their mind is somewhere else. Yes, darling, I'm available.
Available?
Yes.
Okay. So something that I really appreciate about you is how you have guided us and prioritized, even in lockdown, the fact that we still have date night. So in all these weeks of lockdown, where normally we'd be going out and having fun, although we haven't been able to do that, you've made sure it's in the diaries and we stop what we're doing and we have date night at home.
So what I'm hearing you say is that one of the things you appreciate about me is that I have guided us both and prioritized us having a date night even throughout lockdown. I've made that a priority, and that we've managed to somehow have some kind of date night even at home during Corona. Did I get you?
Absolutely, that's great mirroring.
Is there more?
No, I think that's it. That's the appreciation.
Okay, so the receiver will then summarize, validate, and empathize, which is what I'm about to do. So what I'm hearing you say is that one of the things you appreciate about me is that I have guided and prioritized our date nights, even in a Corona sense, at home during the course of the last few difficult weeks. It makes sense to me that you would appreciate this, because you always love the end result. You love our date nights, but sometimes it takes you a little bit of a maneuver to get out of your whatever else is going on in the world and to be available for those. So it makes sense that you would appreciate that, and I would imagine that must make you feel loved and cherished. Yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to do a dialogue about an issue, is that right? And Ruthie and I have already dialogued about who's going to send first on an issue, and it's going to be me. So, are you available?
I am.
Okay, I would like to dialogue on our differences over making plans and making changes in those plans. Are you available to dialogue on that?
Yeah, yes. So what I heard you say is you would like to dialogue over our differences in making plans and changing the plans at the last minute.
Yeah. Okay.
Say it again. If I miss something, it's very important for you to say it again, so you can.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that you were available to talk about this now.
Yeah, we're already.
Okay. Okay. So, when you change a plan that we've made at very short notice, sometimes even on the fly during the course of that planned event, it makes me feel quite sad.
Is what I heard you say is that when I change a plan of ours, I think it's on the fly, I don't know what that means.
During the course of the plan itself.
Okay, so even on the fly, sometimes that makes you feel quite sad. Did I get you?
Yes, you did.
Is there more?
Yes. Can I give you an example?
Sure.
Or two?
One is okay.
Okay, so a few weeks ago, it actually revolves around date night. We had planned to have date night here at home, check in briefly online with a concert that our two boys was doing on Zoom, we're doing on Zoom, and then go out for a nice long romantic walk.
So a few weeks ago, during this time period, on one of our date nights, we had planned to check in online at, I think it was a concert that our boys were doing live, and then go out for a nice long romantic walk. Did I get you?
Yeah. What actually happened was, we had our meal and we got to the point of checking in online for this concert, and then it was as if we had never talked about or agreed to go out for the walk.
Okay. So what I heard you say is that what actually happened was we had our meal and then we went online to just check in on the boys as we arranged, and then it was if we hadn't planned to do anything else other than just watch the boys.
Yeah. There is more. I lost you completely for an hour and a quarter, an hour and a half. Just, you know.
And you felt that you lost me completely for an hour and a half, just like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you got me.
Is there more?
Yeah. When that happens, that's an example of that happening. It doesn't fit with how much I know we respectively love and have regard for each other. I just feel that you've suddenly shut down on me.
And when that happens, you feel, I don't remember the exact word you used, but you feel it doesn't match respectively what we have one for the other. It just doesn't.
It feels like you've shut down on me.
Yes, and it feels like I've shut down on you. Yeah.
And that made me really sad and upset, I suppose.
And that made you sad and upset. Okay. Is there more?
No.
Okay. There could be more, but for time pressures, we're keeping this as neat as we can. So I'm now going to...
There's lots more, believe me.
I'm going to summarise in my words what I think I heard Joel say. And if I miss out anything major, he's going to tell me. So what I heard you say was sometimes when I change my mind on things that we've decided to do together or we're planning to do together, even at the last minute, that causes you pain. You gave an example, a recent example of when we had date night night a few weeks ago, and the plan was we would eat something here and just check in on our boys online on a Zoom concert that they were doing, and we would then go out for a long romantic walk. But what actually happened was we had our meal, we checked in online, and then I wanted to carry on watching them for about an hour and a half, I think you said, an hour, quarter, an hour and a half, and that made you feel sad. It made you feel as if a distance from me, and almost like as if you didn't matter. I don't think you said that.
A disconnect.
Yeah, a disconnect. Okay, is that a good summary?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will now try and absorb that, and I'm going to go into Joel's world to try and make sense of that from in his world. Obviously it doesn't make sense in my world, otherwise we wouldn't have a disconnect. So that makes sense to me, that you would feel disconnect because in your world, being connected with me means being connected with me without anyone else around. And so I get that you would feel disappointed, and that you would be upset about the last minute changes because you are somebody who is more rigid than me and more organised than me and likes to plan accordingly. Is that?
Okay, so how would you summarise how that would make me feel in terms of empathy?
I'll now just choose one or two words which are feeling words. So I imagine that you might have felt a bit lonely or let down.
Lonely is good.
Lonely
is good, yeah. Okay, so there would now be an opportunity for Ruthie to send back to me, having heard what she's heard me send to her about this. She's now going to share with me what's going on for her in her world and invite me to cross the bridge into her world.
Okay. Able to receive?
Yeah.
So that was really quite a shock for me to go in your world and understand your feelings, because in my world, why on earth wouldn't I want to be watching the boys when they're performing?
What I'm hearing you say is it's quite a shock for you to come into my world and hear what was going on for me, because in your world, why on earth wouldn't you want to watch the boys when they were performing?
Yeah, that's right. They're our,
I get you?
Absolutely. They're our boys. They are a continuation of us, and in my world, there wasn't any other consideration. It was, we're in this together.
What I'm hearing you say is that they're our boys and they're a continuation of us, and it didn't even occur to you that we would do anything different. We were in this together. Did I get you?
Yeah.
Is there more?
Yeah. I'm happy to acknowledge, and I know that the fact that I'm a Gemini and I do change my mind, often views, plans, that's who I am, very airy sort of person. So I also understand that it's probably quite challenging for you, being that you're so organised and
What I'm hearing you say is that you acknowledge that given you're a Gemini and you're a bit sort of airy, that must be a challenge for me, must be difficult for me, given that I'm so organised. I get you?
Yeah.
What?
And I think for the purposes of this demonstration, we'll just sort back.
Okay, so I need to summarise now. So what I'm hearing you say is that it was quite a shock for you to come into our world, my world, because in your world it was a no-brainer. You know, it was our children and our boys, which is a continuation of us, and of course, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't we just glide into changing our plans and watching them? Absolutely. However, you do acknowledge the fact that you're a Gemini and very airy, and I'm much more rigid and organised, and that must have been a bit of a challenge for me. Did I get you? Is that a complete summary?
Absolutely.
Okay, so by way of validation, it makes sense to me that at the time you wouldn't have thought anything of this because of your ability generally to be very flexible. You know, you glide into changes when other people make changes for you that would annoy me and don't annoy you. You just glide along with them. So it makes sense to me that for you that change wouldn't have appeared to be challenging. And I would imagine that you must have felt at the time simply quite elated and uplifted by what was going on. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Is that right feeling word?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you can hear that there's been some exchange of different perspectives and acknowledgement from both sides that we understand the world of the other. We haven't flipped back with opposing views. We've listened and mirrored and validated and empathized. What we would do now as therapists is to try and take this a little bit deeper. And there are different ways of taking it deeper. One is to suggest sentence stems to whoever is sending and try and take them to a deeper place. The other is specifically to ask them to explore in their sends whether there has been anything that's taken place in their past, particularly in their childhood, that might have some bearing on the dialogue. So because I'm going to start sending next again, Ruthie's just going to segue for a minute into being the facilitator to invite me to do that, and then she'll go back into being Ruthie and receive. Okay?
Okay. So Joel, can I just invite you perhaps to look into your childhood or into your past and just see if there's anything that's perhaps triggering that feeling of somehow feeling so let down in a situation where Ruthie has had to just now understand that you would even be let down, because clearly in her world, what is there to be let down about? So.
Okay, Ruthie, are you ready to receive?
Yeah. Just shake off the.
Shake off the facilitator.
Yeah.
Okay, so thinking about this, I would just like to reflect a little bit on my childhood, perhaps my late childhood moving towards teens.
Okay, so when I heard you say that now that you're beginning to think about this, you'd like to reflect on your childhood, perhaps your later childhood, more towards your teens?
Yeah. And I'm remembering that at that time, my mother, Alea Shalom, was not so well. And there were times, she should rest in peace in Gan Eden, but there were times when as a child I didn't understand that and I felt let down by her.
Okay, so what I heard you say is that you're remembering times in your childhood where your mother, Alea Shalom, wasn't a particularly well person, and I think what you're saying is that at the time you didn't understand that, and perhaps something there.
Yeah, there's more. I mean, as a child, I didn't have the capacity really to understand it. Why would I have had?
As a child, you didn't have capacity to understand that, and of course, why would you?
So there were occasions when Mama Shalom would not be available to do whatever it was we had agreed was going to happen.
So you didn't understand it, but on occasion there were times when your mum, Alea Shalom, was just not available to be around to do what.
And just thinking about it, you know, as Ruthie, the facilitator, has asked me to think about, this could have some bearing. It could be that when you do when I have the feelings that I do in the context of us changing plans at the last minute, it triggers some kind of memory which is sad for me.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that it's possible that now, when I change things at the last minute, there's a possibility that it's triggering something in you about those early days, very early days, which is going back to that time then when you faced a lot of disappointment. I guess plan changing.
Yeah. That's possibly a significant factor here.
Okay.
Can you summarise that?
So, yes.
Can I just interrupt for a second before you do? Just do a bit of a psychic about Imago, about the dialoguing process. When people are not used to dialoguing with each other, after each send, they'll say what I'm hearing you say and ask, is there more? When a couple get more used to dialoguing and it becomes something that they do regularly, then it can be done simply by intonation. You'll notice that we haven't had those prompts in the dialogue that we've just, as the dialogue has gone on, we've just been working with our eyes, our grandparents' eyes, and our intonation to know whether there's been more or not.
So, in summary, you feel that there is a possibility that because of your childhood, which was, by the sounds of it, pretty difficult with a mother who wasn't well, that perhaps there were things which you were expecting or going to happen, or plans that maybe didn't happen at the last minute because of that, and you're wondering, exploring, if perhaps the reason that you do get so upset about me changing things at the last minute is possibly connected to that.
Yeah, it's a good summary.
Okay, so just going over to your world, that makes total sense to me, because of course, if you did have a childhood where any child is expecting things and they don't happen, is going to be very upset, and certainly children not understanding if mummy's not well, no child's going to really understand that, and if it happens repeatedly, I guess that would be really, really painful. So I imagine that when I change plans at the last minute, when, you know, possibly subconsciously, but that's what all this work is about, I imagine that you might feel, oh, here we go again, or well, why don't things ever happen when they're supposed to? And a feeling of maybe being alone.
Yeah, loneliness about right.
Mm.
So Ruth is going to make an appointment with me now to send back in a second send. I mean, these dialogues can have as many cycles for sending and receiving as is necessary. But before she does, I'm of course hopeful that there may be something in what she sends that will be accommodating of my world. But just so you all know, that there are times when after a dialogue like this, we would start a new dialogue, perhaps in a different session at two halves, where we would actually have something called a behavior change request, and one partner would ask the other to go out of their way to change what is intuitive for them and to gift that change. That request has to be smart, it has to be small, measurable, attainable, and realistic, and time bound as well, for a period of a couple of weeks or 3 weeks or something. And one would ask for the other, and I think the idea of gifting is really beautiful. So it doesn't come easily for you, but you give it as a gift. That may or may not be necessary here, depending on what we hear now. But Ruth is going to make an appointment with me, and we're going to conclude the dialogue on this subject for you.
Yeah. I just want to add to the only reason why I'm now going to ask Joel again if he's able to receive. We wouldn't be doing this in a session that we would be facilitating, because obviously the couple are involved in a very deep emotional send and receive, but because we keep coming in and out all the time, this role play, I'll now actually say that I wouldn't normally interrupt a very emotional exchange like that. So are you able to receive?
Yeah.
Hearing you say that now about your childhood, made me feel very moved and also sad for the little boy.
What I'm hearing you say is that hearing me say that about my childhood made you understand a lot more, and not sure, you can say understand,
Sad.
what did you say?
Sad.
Made you feel sad for the little boy.
Yeah.
For me and for the little boy.
Yeah. And there's no way that I would want to add sadness in that situation.
And there's no way that you would want to add sadness in that situation. Did I get you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm going to, I'm not going to promise, but I'm going to certainly try to remember that, and that when I make changes which I see as totally normal and airy, and that I will need to think very carefully, because for you that outcome could be very, very different.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you're trying to take that into account, and that you will accommodate, I suppose. Not sure your exact terminology. Got distracted a little bit by
yes,
example.
I think what I'm trying to say is I'll be more sensitive. I doubt if I'll ever be able to be rigid and stick to things, because that is just not going to happen. But I can certainly be much more sensitive, and at least understand that what could cause you pain.
What I'm hearing you say is that you will, in future, although you have this airy outlook, you'll be more sensitive to what could cause me pain, and act more sensitively in that way. Take it into account, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did I get you?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that hearing about my childhood and hearing therefore the sadness that there is both in me and in the little boy in me makes you sad, and the last thing you'd want to do is add to that sadness, and that you would do your best to be as sensitive as possible to these circumstances and my feelings, notwithstanding that you want to be airy and have flexibility, as much as is appropriate, as much as you can. Did I get you?
Absolutely. Great.
Good. So it makes sense to me that having heard, in fact, us both having brought out, I wasn't aware of it myself really, what's really going on for me deep down, that you're prepared to be sensitive, and I would imagine that must make you feel empowered, loving, giving,
and connected, even more connected as well.
More connected with me.
Mm.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, guys.
There you have it.
That's a dialogue completed with an Imago hug at the end. And I just want to add my thanks to Rinat and Sheldon for organising this and giving us the opportunity to share with you today. If any of you have any questions or any follow-up that you'd like from either of us, please feel free to contact us at twohalvesofasoul.com, twohalvesofasoul.com, and we'd be happy to engage with you directly. Obviously, there's only a limit. There is a limit to what we're able to portray in a short presentation like this. But it's been great being part of this, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.